King Jesus, King Jesus. Okay, hey, all my subscribers. I haven't been putting out videos because I've been really overwhelmed with the amount of things that's going on in the world today, and it's caused me a depression. So in reflecting, I thought about where things all went wrong. And to my best recollection, they went wrong when they assassinated John F. Kennedy. So I went back to look at that issue, and I ran across two informative articles, one at Veterans Today and another by a Veterans Today contributor named James Fetzer. And I also ran across a YouTube video that I encourage everybody to watch. It's called JFK at 50, the who, the how, and the why. And I'm gonna put links to all of these articles in my in the box below so that you can review it at your leisure. But I particularly thought about this also because of the many threats that I hear people making on President Obama's life, and the many situations that have transpired where nefarious characters have gained access to the president, particularly on the elevator when the criminal who should have been locked up for having a gun was in the elevator with the president. And what the JFK information reveals is just how deep corruption can go in the government and throughout society to kill a president. And so I wanted to talk to you particularly about this article by James Fetzer. It says that 6 JFK shooters, including 3 tied to the CIA, named. The subtitle in the article states that 6 JFK shooters, including 3 tied to the CIA, named by the Assassination Authority. Named by Assassination Authority. This is by Sherwood Ross with Jim Felser. The article states that 6 shooters participated in the assassination of John F. Kennedy, including 3 with ties to the Central Intelligence Agency, were named by a prominent critic of the Warren Commission report. Remarkably, Lee Harvey Oswald, the Warren Commission's lone assassin designate, was not among them. During an interview published this past November 20th in the Santa Barbara Independent, the Warren Commission critic, researcher Dr. James Fetzer of Madison, Wisconsin, and chairman of the Oswald Innocence Campaign, revealed the names of 5 of those who appear to have been shooters, where he has identified the 6 separately. This article was published on December 28, 2013. And I want to lament the fact that the newspapers haven't covered this. As a matter of fact, they hid it, and now anybody who questions the Warren Commission report are labeled conspiracy theorists. I remember when I was a kid living in Miami that there was so many rumors swirling before Kennedy was assassinated that he was going to be killed. I was only 8 years old, and I remember hearing about that. Also, there were only 2 white men's pictures on my mother's wall when I was a kid. One was of the fair-haired Jesus Christ, and the second was of an assassinated John Kennedy. I know probably black people don't have these pictures up in their homes today because they've been so alienated from the truth. I mean, Kennedy was assassinated in 63. So when Robert Kennedy and Martin Luther King was assassinated in 67 and 68. It had been some time since Kennedy was assassinated. So I guess the feeling was, well, after that, they had this picture with Martin Luther King, John F. Kennedy, and Robert Kennedy in the picture. And after Robert Kennedy was assassinated and Martin Luther King, that picture replaced the picture that was just John Kennedy. So it says the first shot that hit, which struck Kennedy in the back, appears to have been fired from the top of the county records building by Dallas Deputy Sheriff Harry Weatherford. He used a .30-06 to fire a Mannlicher Carcano MC bullet fitted with a plastic collar known as a sabot, which hit John F. Kennedy 5.5 inches below the shoulder, just to the right of the spinal column. This was a shallow wound with no point of exit. And he's pictured here. It says that, according to researcher Penn Jones Jr., Weatherford was a crack shot and was on top of the Dallas County Jail building at the time of the assassination. A researcher had once asked him if he had shot JFK. Weatherford replied, "You little son of a bitch, I shoot lots of people." Jones also wrote that a custom-made silencer for a rifle had been delivered to Weatherford a few weeks before the assassination. Number 2, Jack Lawrence, a U.S. Air Force expert who had gone to work for the automobile dealership that provided vehicles for the president's motorcade just a few days before the assassination, fired the shot that passed through the windshield and struck JFK in the throat from the south end of the Triple Underpass. And this is his picture. It says that Jack Lawrence worked for the downtown Lincoln Mercury car dealership in Dallas. Lawrence claimed that Lee Harvey Oswald asked to test drive a car in early November. Afterwards, Lawrence reported the incidents to the Federal Bureau of Investigation. On the 21st of November 1963, Lawrence borrowed one of the firm's cars. The following day, he failed to turn up for work. According to Jim Marr's Crossfire, about 30 minutes after the assassination, he came hustling through the company's showroom, pale and sweating with mud on his clothes. He rushed into the men's room and threw up. He told co-workers he had been ill that morning and that he had tried to drive the car back to the dealership but had to park it due to the heavy traffic. Later, employees found the car parked behind a wooden picket fence on top of the grassy knoll overlooking Dealey Plaza. Lawrence's strange behavior was reported to the Dallas police. He was interviewed by officers investigating the assassination of John F. Kennedy. They discovered that Lawrence was a marksman in the United States Air Force. According to Beverly Oliver, Lawrence was a regular at the Carousel Club owned by Jack Ruby and a close friend of George Senator. The third person to shoot the president was Nestor Tony Izquierdo, an anti-Castro Cuban recruit by the CIA, fired the shot that hit JFK in the back of the head after the limousine was brought to a halt. I want to just tell you here that now I understand why they allowed the Cubans to take South Florida over, why the Republicans have given so many free benefits to Cubans that come here, and why the Republican Party has promoted Cubans to senatorships and have them running for president. This is why. This is why the Cubans are successful in America when no other Latins are, because they helped kill the president. And this article shows that they have a monument in Freedom Park where they have this murderer of the president. He has a statue, and nobody can tell you why there's a statue of him in Miami. The article says that Néstor Tony Izquierdo, an anti-Castro Cuban recruited by the CIA, fired a shot that hit JFK in the back of the head after the limousine was brought to a halt. He fired 3 shots with 2 misses using a Mannlicher Carcano, which were the only unsilenced shots fired from the Dallas Tex building, which housed the Uranium Mining Corporation, Dallas Uranium and Oil, that was a CIA front. And here he is depicted on his statue in Miami at Freedom Park to show you what kind of country we live in, to promote the murders of the president on statues. This is the kind of country we live in. The 4th person to fire at our president was Roscoe White, a Dallas police officer with ties to the CIA, fired from the grassy knoll adjoining the motorcade route, but seems to have pulled his shot, Fetzer said, because it would have hit Jackie. So his shot went into the grass. His son subsequently discovered his diary, but gave it to the FBI, and it has not been seen since. So this is Roscoe White. It says that Roscoe White joined the United States Marine and left for Japan in August '57. He was stationed in Atsugi and worked on a U-2 project. White joined the Dallas Police Force in September '63. Soon afterwards, his wife, Geneva White, claimed that she overheard her husband and Jack Ruby plotting the assassination of John F. Kennedy. White left the police force and was employed by a company called M&M Equipment. On 23 September 1971, White and a fellow worker, Richard Adair, were both badly burnt in an industrial fire. Adair recovered, but White died the following day. On the 4th of September 1990, Roscoe's son, Ricky White, revealed to a meeting at the University of Texas that his father had been involved in the killing of the president. The diary said, "After my father shot the president, he handed his 7.65 Mauser to the man standing beside him, hurled over the fence, took the film from the military man, whirled around the fence, and went through the parking lot." White added that Lee Harvey Oswald had also taken part but had not fired any of the shots. White then went on to kill J.D. Tippit. Ricky White claimed he had got the information from his father's diary. This apparently has been taken away by the Federal Bureau of Investigation. The 5th person who shot our president was Malcolm McWallace, who shot from the Dallas Book Depository. He may have murdered a dozen people for Lyndon Baines Johnson. Mac, as he's called, appeared to have fired from the west side of the book depository at Texas Governor John Connally in the mistaken belief he was Senator Ralph Yarborough, whom Lyndon Baines Johnson despised. Wallace's fingerprints was found on one of the boxes in the assassin's lair in the book depository from which Oswald allegedly fired. It says Malcolm McWallace, the son of a farmer and born in Mount Pleasant, Texas, in October 1921. 4 years later, the family moved to Dallas. In 1939, Wallace joined the U.S. Marines. After completing basic training, Wallace was sent to Hawaii, where he served on the aircraft carrier USS Lexington. The following year, Wallace fell from a ladder and badly injured his back. On the 25th of September 1940, he was medically discharged and was returned to Dallas. In 1941, Wallace became a student at the University of Texas at Austin. He began to take an interest in politics and was elected president of the Student Union. In October 1944, Horner P. Rainey, president of the University of Texas and an outspoken supporter of the American Socialist Party, was fired. Wallace led a protest march of 8,000 students, but the campaign to have Rainey reinstated ended in failure. Wallace graduated in 1947. The following month, he married Mary DuBose Barton, daughter of a Methodist preacher. While he was working on his doctorate at Columbia University, he taught at Long Island University, the University of Texas, and the University of North Carolina. It was at this time that Edward Clark introduced Wallace to Lyndon Baines Johnson, and in October 1950, he began working with the United States Department of Agriculture in Texas. The final shooter at our president was Frank Sturgis, who was later complicit in the Watergate burglary, who also appears to have been connected to the CIA. It's said by Fetzer to have fired from the north end of the triple underpass the shot that entered Kennedy's right temple. Sturgis is known to have ties to Meyer Lansky, a notorious crime syndicate kingpin and Jew, and confessed his role to the New York City Gold Shield detective when he was arrested attempting to kill Marita Morantz. It says Sturgis became involved with Marita Morantz, who was having an affair with Fidel Castro. In January 1960, Sturgis and Lorenz took part in a failed attempt to poison Castro. It is also believed that Sturgis was involved in helping the CIA organize the Bay of Pigs investigation. Sturgis was also a member of Operation 40. A memo sent by Patrick Gray, director of the FBI, to H.R. Haldeman in 1972, sources in Miami say that Sturgis is now associated with organized crime activities. In his book, Assassination of JFK 1977, Bernard Fensaward claims that Sturgis was heavily involved with the mafia, particularly with Santos Trafficante and Meyer Lansky in Florida. In January 2004, E. Howard Hunt gave a taped interview with his son, St. John Hunt, claiming that Lyndon Baines Johnson was the instigator of the assassination of John F. Kennedy, and that it was organized by Sturgis, Cord Meyer, David Afif Phillips, and David Sanchez Morales. In his interview with the Santa Barbara Independent, Fetzer said that there were shooters at 6 different locations with a total of up to 10 shots fired at the president, three of which missed. He asserted JFK was hit 4 different times, in the back from behind, in the throat from in front, and twice in the head after the driver had brought the car to a halt to make sure he would be killed. Another shot missed and injured bystander James Tegu, while 1 or more shots hit Connolly. And this is the kill zone that they created to kill our president. By contrast, the Warren Commission concluded that a single bullet struck Kennedy in the back, exited through his throat, and then wounded Connolly. Fetzer explained that the magic bullet theory propounded by Warren Commission is not only false, but provably false, and not even anatomically possible because cervical vertebrae intervene. Ruth Payne, who appears to have been working for the CIA, arranged for Oswald to go to work for the book depository just weeks before the assassination, which was part of the whole project to set him up as a patsy. Fetzer said, right up to the time of the assassination, Oswald was a paid FBI informant collecting $200 a month, which explains why his W-2 forms have never been released by the government. As for the motivation to kill John F. Kennedy, Fetzer noted that he was threatening to shatter the CIA into 1,000 pieces. that the Joint Chiefs believed he was soft on communism, that the Mafia was unhappy because Attorney General Robert Kennedy was cracking down on organized crime, that he was going to abolish the Fed and cut the oil depletion allowance. Fetzer said Vice President Johnson, who had forced his way onto the ticket with JFK in Los Angeles in order to succeed him when he would be taken out, was a pivotal player facilitating the assassination, sent his chief administrative assistant, Cliff Carter, down to Dallas to make sure all the arrangements for the assassinations were in place. And his close friend, J. Edgar Hoover, used the FBI to cover it up. Fetzer said further, there were more than 15 indications of Secret Service complicity in setting Kennedy up for the hit. 2 agents assigned to the president's limousine were left behind at Love Field. That John F. Kennedy's limousine, which should have been in the middle of the motorcade, was put first. That the motorcycle escort was reduced to 4 and instructed not to ride ahead of the limo's rear wheels. And after the first shot were fired, the driver pulled the limousine to the left and stopped. What's more, Fetzer produced an AP photograph that appears to show Oswald standing in the doorway of the book depository at the time JFK was shot. They may be compared with Oswald's photograph taken later that afternoon in Dallas Police Headquarters. When questioned, Oswald told Dallas homicide detective Will Fritz that during the shooting he had been standing with Bill Shelley, one of his supervisors, in front of the building. Note the missing left shoulder and the figure who is in front of and behind the man in the doorway at the same time, which are obvious indication the photo had been altered. Facial features have been distorted, but the clothing is the key. If you look at the height, weight, build, and the clothing he's wearing, especially the highly unusual shirt and the t-shirt he has on, they correspond very closely to what Oswald was wearing when he was arrested, Fetzer said. For more proof that the man in the doorway was Lee Oswald, visit Oswald Innocence Campaign online. While they altered features of the doorman's face, the only other candidates for having been there were not wearing comparable clothing and did not fit the height, weight, and build of the man in the doorway. When you consider the totality of the evidence, no alternative explanation is reasonable. In his Santa Barbara Independent interview, Fetzer said public opinion polls have shown over the years that as much as 85% of the public have expressed disagreement with the Warren Commission and the lone assassin theory. Fetzer elaborated on the points he made in great detail during his keynote address, The Assassination of America, for the Santa Barbara JFK conference that he organized and moderated, which is available at jfk50santarbarbara.com. Fetzer is a former Marine Corps officer who earned his PhD in the history and philosophy of science. He has published 29 books, including 3 collections of studies by experts on different aspects of the assassination. Distinguished McKnight University Professor Emeritus at the University of Minnesota Duluth, he is often an editor and contributed to Veterans Today. Now, one of the things that Veterans Today stress is that we don't even celebrate, we don't have a holiday for the death of John Kennedy. Everything is happy this, happy that. Even for Martin Luther King, it's Happy Martin Luther King's Day. There was nothing happy about the killing of Kennedy, the killing of Robert Kennedy, or the killing of Martin Luther King. And as long as this situation is as it is, and nobody is brought to task for this, it leaves the possibility of more assassination of U.S. presidents open, especially with all the draconian laws they're passing so that you can't do this and you can't do that. You can't publish this, you can't publish that. You can't say what you want. Freedom of speech is gone. It's all crazy. Our country is a mess. And steps need to be taken by real Americans to stop this. The Republican Party is a criminal enterprise, a complete criminal enterprise. And if they're voted in the Senate, you will see them what they do to you Americans.